Good morning. Today we'll be hearing from the Department of Public Safety. It includes 8 divisions in the presentation. We'll be starting with the Office of the Medical Director on page 156, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Leeds.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Rusty Leeds, Assistant County Manager. This morning we'll be going through the 8 divisions of the Department of Public Safety. So, as stated, we will begin with the Office of the Medical Director. The Office of the Medical Director mission is to provide state-of-the-art medical direction and clinical oversight to all pre-hospital providers within the EMS system. One of the programs is medical direction. The medical director provides physician-led, patient-centered, and team-based oversight for all aspects of pre-hospital care. It is mandated by statute that we have a medical director to provide that service. We also have program management. Program management provides management of specialty programs within the emergency medical services system to include integrated healthcare, a LINKS program, hospital system liaison, clinical investigations, and individualized care plans. Where are we at? Okay. We're on to clinical practice management. The clinical practice management provides management of the credentialing process, pre-hospital protocols, and systems performance data. That's the function where we ensure that all of our EMTs and all of our paramedics through EMS and the fire service, Wichita, Derby, Sedgwick County, and other fire service EMTs are properly credentialed to ensure that they're providing quality care to the citizens of Sedgwick County. So those are the programs that fall under the Office of the Medical Director. On slide 4, or on the slide for the budget request, the budget request is basically flat. It actually is a small decrease. The decrease comes simply from calculations on compensation adjustments, benefits. Contractuals and commodities stayed flat, and therefore the Office of the Medical Director is operating basically at a 2018 level budget with a 1.59% reduction based on those salary adjustments. If you have any questions, the directors for the various divisions are present. So if you have a specific question that I can't answer or that needs more detail, the directors are here for your convenience. So, any questions?
Move into their new offices.
Currently, it's under construction. I think that we are projecting September. It could be sooner, but they have done demolition and they are in the process of rebuilding the interior. So we met with the architect and Tanya's group the other day and went over some plans to make sure everything was moving ahead as expected. So
Okay.
should be in soon.
I saw the construction pictures. Do we have security on that building now so people don't steal the wire back out of it while it's under construction?
There's a security system in the building.
Good. Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, a couple of things. I saw Dr. Gallagher up in the hospital one day, and that place gives him respect. We ought to give him respect, too. I mean, I know we do, but I mean, you should see the place. He runs the whole hospital. They bow down to him. You wouldn't believe that. The guy has incredible authority and respect from a huge number of people. It's crazy. So I just wanted you all to know that. If you haven't seen him in his element at the hospital, you got to go over there and just see what he does for real. It's crazy. I think we're lucky to have him. So I want to say I appreciate what he does to for the county. But I do have a couple of questions. Since we had a change across the street in terms of chief of the Wichita Fire, is there anything changed with respect to whether how we credential or do we credential in any way the Wichita firefighters for their EMT demonstration certification type stuff?
I will say, based on my conversations with Chief Snow and with Dr. Gallagher, the relationships are exceptional. I don't believe there's been any change in the methodology there. Doctor?
So that's exactly correct. The relationships are dramatically improved, best they've ever been as far as I understand, and they are now following the exact same standards and processes that the county personnel are. So we have a true equivalency within our processes, regardless of whether you are attended to by a city employee or a county employee. It is exactly what we strive for.
That is great news. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for the update. That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Might also mention that Clearwater reached out to Dr. Gallagher. They would like to have their EMS paramedics, EMTs, credentialed in similar fashion. So,
Well, I guess I would ask a question then. What are the? I know we have a number of volunteer departments around the county, and of course we have. You already mentioned Derby, but are there other departments out there that are not doing it yet, and do we need to maybe try to make those things happen?
I think we've addressed the major players. Clearwater was one of the last outstanding. I attended their city council earlier this week, and they had a unanimous vote to join and come up to the same standard.
Good.
There's a couple smaller first response non-transport agencies that still exist, and we won't leave those behind. But I think we've reached a threshold of success in bringing in the entirety of the county.
I'll just say one more thing, because I see Director Hadley in the back, but I don't remember now if it was Dr. Hadley or if it was Dr. Gallagher, but I went over to an EMS event a while back, and I remember you just happened to have people in the room, and you said, all right, you five, go, heart attack. And there was a dummy, literally a mannequin or whatever you want to call it, there. And these 5 people got together just like a team, and immediately they all knew exactly what to do.
Right.
And it was impressive. And I thought, this is the type of training that they're getting, and I was so impressed that they were able to come together essentially randomly. It was unprepared, and you promised me it wasn't scripted, right? It was actually a real demonstration of what you actually do, and it was really impressive. I mean, because these people come together as teams essentially randomly, and they're shifting the way that works, I'm sure, but they have to work together. They have to know how everybody has a job to do, and they know exactly what that is, and that training is so important. I'm just really impressed with what you guys are doing, and I was impressed the day I saw that. I was impressed with you at the hospital. We've got a good system here, and I'll continue to say I think we have one of the best EMS systems because of all the things we're doing here, probably in the nation. So I'm very impressed with what we do here. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much.
very good. Then we will move along. The OMD has no decision packages, so we will move along to emergency management. It's on page 168 if you want to follow along in the manual. All right, so emergency management, the mission is to create a safe, secure, and healthy environment for the whole community through a comprehensive program of prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. The programs in emergency management include administration, training and exercise, which includes public outreach. In training and exercise, we provide training and exercises for first responders and Sedgwick County residents. The goal is to provide at least 8 trainings or exercises per year for all first responders, and at least 16 community education opportunities throughout the year, with at least 16 social media events as well. We also have the public warning system, which includes the outdoor warning sirens, and we are members of the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System through FEMA. And we attempt to ensure that our outdoor warning sirens are available 90% or greater as measured by weekly tests. 90% accounts for the fact that we have occasional malfunctions that need to be repaired, and they're usually repaired promptly within a matter of days or less. But that's kind of the goal that they shoot for. Emergency management budget request. Emergency management has performance grants, which include 1 FTE for a planner. And we have a health and medical emergency grant that provides money for health and medical emergency training. So in our budget request, we have some reductions, and we'll explain those on the next slide. So Personnel is basically, it's minus 2.43. Again, that's for some compensation adjustments. Contractuals are down, which includes about $2,200 in grant reduction, and then a $30,000 contractual allowance for 2018 for the purchase of a crisis management software. Those will go away in 19, so it reduces that dollar amount in the contractuals. Commodities, we have a slight increase from grant funding, which shows at an 18% increase, but it's about $14,000. And then the equipment allocation of $74,978 was for updating audiovisual equipment in the EOC, so that will go away in 19. That equipment's being purchased now. And then we have the CIP for siren replacement and additions of $110,000, which will be added later in the budget. So generally, the budget is fairly close to or slightly below what it was for the 18 level. We do have one decision package from emergency management. The ask on this decision package is for an increase in contractuals based on the fact that back in 2012, the county went from 101 to 147 sirens, and over time, the cost of maintenance on those siren systems increases each year. At this point, those sirens have battery backup, and the batteries are reaching end of life. We do not replace the batteries whenever they start to age, but we replace them when they fail. We wait until they fail, and then we replace them promptly. We anticipate that the number of batteries needing to be replaced is going to increase in the next year or two, and then it will level out to where we're having to replace probably a similar amount each year. But the ask is for $40,000 additional in contractuals to ensure that those repairs are done timely and that we have the money present. The alternative to that is that we remain somewhere level, and if we do have overages, we can dip into emergency contingency, public safety contingency at the end of the year. Last year we did have a small deficit where we reached into emergency contingency for about $15,000. That is not the rule. That was a one-time thing, but the request simply is to keep up with maintenance costs. And again, the option would be to continue at a fairly flat level through 19 and see if we have to dip into contingency. But right now we're anticipating we're going to have increases, so we're asking for that increase. So that's just something to consider as we move toward a recommended budget later on. With that, that's all of emergency management. Do we have any questions?
Certainly. Any questions from the commissioners? I have a couple.
Yes, sir.
Do we have everything worked out with the thing that was in the paper about our siren system?
We are doing okay with that. We're still working with the company. We've talked to others who have the same type of system and the same type of fix being implemented. We're confident with the way we're moving forward. So,
okay.
Without getting into details, we're comfortable where we're at right now.
Good. One more question about the sirens. On your slide, you show interfund transfers, $110,000, and it's going away in 2019. And you said that was for sirens?
Yes, sir. That's not actually going away just at this point in the budget cycle. It's not been added back in because we will cover CIP at a later date. But that money is, when you see the CIP budget, you will see that line item continues in CIP annually for the replacement of sirens that need to be replaced. So the money is in the 2019 CIP, but you won't see that until Lindsay goes through that later with you.
Well, that answers my second question then, because I was looking at financial forecast, and it shows outdoor warning sirens in the CIP for $110,000 each year. So
yes, sir. Just at this point in the budget, it didn't show up in these numbers.
And commissioners, just for a reminder, one of the things that we talked about yesterday is this budget document won't necessarily match the forecast, and that is because for now we haven't included any CIP in the hearing materials. So that will be a recurring theme. You'll see those transfers out will get smaller every time.
Okay. I was just trying to correlate the two documents.
That's fair.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any. Thank you.
Very good. Next, we will talk about the fire district. That is on page 193. We do have Chief Leak present as well. So the mission of the fire department, the Fire District 1, is dedicated to creating safer communities through prevention, preparedness, and effective emergency response. The fire district has the programs within the fire district are the district administration, fleet maintenance, fire prevention, fire training, and operations. Administration is pretty self-explanatory, and we will move on to fleet maintenance. The fire district does have 2 employees on staff who are paid from fire district funds to maintain the fire fleet, the apparatus, and the other administrative vehicles and squads. These 2 individuals are certified to manage that type of equipment, and they work alongside with county fleet personnel to maintain the fleet. Fire prevention. Fire prevention establishes policies and procedures for interpreting, enforcing, and building fire codes. Fire prevention staff and operations crews provide public education to schools, industry, and stakeholders throughout the district. Fire prevention staff and operations crews collectively conducted 1,587 building inspections. They conducted 48 fire investigations. Revenues from permits, reviews, and inspections in 2017 amounted to $126,957. They issued 2,838 burn permits throughout the county and facilitated 2 recruit academies, graduated 13 firefighters during the course of 2017. Fire training. Fire training conducts safety training for both internal and external customers. The fire district is responsible for maintaining a well-trained workforce that recognizes NFPA standards, industry best practices. Fire district employees, to ensure that they are up to speed, received collectively about 48,000 hours of training over the course of 2018 to maintain their skill levels. That includes both firefighting and medical skill levels. And currently all district officers hold the Fire Department Safety Officers Association designation. Fire operations is where the rubber meets the road. Fire operations consists of 9 fire stations across the county. They include fire suppression, medical responses. They participate in training of recruits and training of their personnel on staff. They participate in community events and special functions. The district covers 618 square miles and responded to just over 9,000 alarms last year. Funds within the fire district include a fire contingency. The fire district has about 69,000 citizens within that 618 square miles that we serve. In our budget request from property tax funds, the budget will allow us to operate at a level similar to 2018. Again, we forecasted generally a flat budget to the best of our ability. The district, we'll move on to the next slide. So our budget request for personnel was lower by 0.30%. That again is just simply adjustments to pay and benefits. Contractuals were down with some reallocation. Our debt service is anticipated to be up slightly for past purchases. Our commodities came in a little higher. Where we downgraded our contractuals a little bit, we moved some money to commodities. And then our capital equipment projections, which includes purchases of fleet vehicles and squads that are not apparatus, was allocated at $276,262 for 2019, bringing our total budget in at 0.18% below the 2018 revised. Okay. And the last thing on the fire district slides is a brief discussion about the restructuring. Over the past couple of years, there's been an effort to be more efficient with the fire district as a result of the financial difficulties that existed previously, that we've kind of come out of, at least for the time being. There was 6 captains were slated for reduction to lieutenant rank. They would not reduce the number of bodies on the staffing table, but we would reduce 6 captains to the lieutenant level as people retired. As of today, we had 2 captains who retired in December of 17. We had a captain who retired at the end of April. So at this point, we have converted 3 of the 6 captain positions to lieutenants. So we've increased lieutenants by 3 and decreased captains by 3, which results in a small salary benefit savings. We also have 1 deputy fire marshal position that has been held and not filled, and we have 1 division chief position that has been held and not filled, and those continue to be held at this time. There's also been an adjustment to the apparatus replacement project to ensure that we're utilizing those vehicles to the greatest efficiency as possible. We don't want to run vehicles that are unsafe, but we don't want to purchase vehicles sooner than necessary and increase our costs, so that's another thing that's been done to help manage costs. So with that, that is the fire district presentation. Do we have any questions?
Question. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. A couple of quick ones on slide number 31. What's R&D there? I should probably know that, but it's not ringing a bell.
That's research and development, basically.
Okay.
There are no costs in 2019. Chief, what was the $15,000 for?
Research and development is monies that are put in there for us to do some research on a different, maybe state-of-the-art type equipment that's being used out there. So we'll use that money as a part of the research.
Well, that's the acronym R&D that I'm used to. I just thought maybe that was something different here, but I didn't expect to see that in this budget. That's fine. I'm curious as to the personnel costs in 19 being essentially almost the same number as 18. But we're saying this includes salary and benefit increases?
Correct, and some restructuring would move in those captains to lieutenants. We have a little bit of salary savings.
So that covers the cost of raises for the other firefighters?
Not sure about raises.
I don't think those reductions wouldn't offset.
I didn't think so. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
So I see. So yesterday I asked the same question on another presentation. I was told it includes, and this one here, I'm not so sure it does.
Well, this number includes some salary adjustments. What page is that on for the fire district?
Commissioner, at this point, there are no salary adjustments. The raises are not included at this time.
In this presentation, but yesterday you said they were, in the previous presentation yesterday.
If I'm thinking maybe MAPD, it was the city side. We adjusted their budget. It's just a flat contractual amount, and we included their amount. But in the hearing documents for all of the county division personnel, you won't see any of those pay adjustments to the pay pool or bonus pool until the recommended budget.
That's what I thought we did last year. That's why I was confused yesterday, and I brought that up. So, all right. Thanks for clarifying that again. Regional Fire Training Center. Chief, are we using that at all?
Yes, we are.
How's that going?
It's going pretty well. We have an agreement with the City of Wichita, and we set up dates and times early, once a year, and we've actually been using the facility, so it's working really well.
Can you let us know in a report at some point about how many man-hours of training we got out of that place in a period of time, they say over a year? How many hours of training do we get at that facility?
Absolutely.
That'd be nice to know that. And are we also going out? Are we going out of county for any training at this time?
We don't do a lot of out-of-county training, and mostly it's in the county.
But we used to go out of county a lot. They used to go to like Newton to do the burns and things like that.
Oh, we'll still do that with the academy. That's one type of training, the live burn training.
Yeah.
That we will take the recruits out there because they have the facility to do that. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate you asking the question about the pay raises. I had the same question, but I do have a couple other questions. Out of the 9,174 calls that you responded to last year, how many were in areas that do not pay 18 mills for service?
I would have to get that data for you. We'd have to break that down. 'Cause
Okay, I would like that information.
Okay.
Okay. One more off-the-wall question. I got a phone call the other day, and I get it every year, that says that Sedgwick County Fire District Number 1 is conducting do stop, drop, and roll in the schools, and they want me to contribute. And I'd been doing it in the past, but it got me thinking, is it a scam? And so I said, I'll contribute, but send Chief Leak up, and they didn't seem to know who Chief Leak was.
There are some scams out there, absolutely. Yes.
So this is a scam.
Yes. And there's others out there, too, that will use the association and different names. So if ever that happens, just have them call me. And most of the time, I never receive a call.
Okay, because even though I told them to send it, have you come up and talk to me about it, they did send me a bill, which I have not paid because I've been waiting to see you to find out if it's a scam. So make sure that we get the word out to the public that Sedgwick County Fire District Number 1 does not conduct stop, drop, and roll in schools and do not contribute to this scam.
Sure.
And I'll bring it in and provide it to our folks here so that they can see what the request is for. Good.
Mr. Chairman, as a follow-up question to that, they do some children's education efforts from the Fire District Number 1. They're doing some of that type of stuff, but not a program that he's describing, but they're doing some education stuff.
We're not going to call people like that.
Okay, not going to call people, but you are in the schools or some
Absolutely.
places doing that type of training.
Yes.
Okay, and if you need that money to do that, you'll talk to us, I assume.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Well, thanks for that answer. I appreciate it. I don't have any other questions, and I don't see any other questions from anyone else. Thank you for being here.
Okay, we will move along to the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, or Division. So the mission of it's on page 337. The mission of the Metropolitan Area Building Construction Division is to ensure all residential and commercial structures are properly and safely planned, built, maintained within Sedgwick County using national best practices while providing fair and equitable rules for the local building industry. In other words, we're trying to be good partners in the process while ensuring that codes are followed and that public safety is a priority. Within the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department, the areas that are funded include administration. All licensing certification of contractors and trades technicians run through administration. 24,000 building and trades permits are issued annually. Building inspections include all residential and commercial building projects with 72,000 annual inspections. The City of Wichita, unincorporated Sedgwick County, and Class 2 and 3 cities are included in that. We also have contracts with a few cities to do some inspection for them. I think Andover and anybody else outside Sedgwick County? Chris Lee? Andover, okay. Land use, enforcing sanitary and water well codes, soil, groundwater, private wastewater disposal, and water supplies, site plan review and FEMA floodplain management. We have 2,500 annual safety and use inspections. The MABCD City of Wichita reimbursement and the reimbursement of City of Wichita are funds to manage that relationship, that financial relationship in the joint venture. Getting to the budget request. As you can see, there's only a very slight increase of 0.17%. And getting into the details, 1.31%, slight increase in personnel costs. Contractuals are down slightly, 0.25%. Commodities stayed flat. Equipment and interfund equipment stayed flat. And interfund transfers are down slightly. So ultimately, the budget comes in about 1.17% above 2018 revised. We do have two decision packages from MABCD. The decision packages include a request for an additional plumbing inspector. We have had a temporary inspector in place to help manage the workload over the course of this year so far. The request is justified by the volume of work that they are doing. The position will generate the revenue to pay for itself and more. And we want to ensure that we provide timely and safe inspections, and adding this position, changing it from a temporary position to a permanent position, will allow for the efficient operation of MABCD in the plumbing inspection area. The request of $93,230 includes the cost of a vehicle and equipment. The actual recurring cost of $70,230, that portion of it will be recurring as salary, benefits, and fleet costs. The other $23,000 will be a one-time expense. The second decision package is very similar. This is a request for an additional mechanical inspector. Again, we have had an overfill position operating temporarily in 2018, again to meet the demands for a mechanical inspector. The request is to make it a permanent position, as we anticipate that the volume of work will continue to be at the same level or perhaps greater. The cost on this position is basically the same as the plumbing inspector at $93,230, and again $70,230 will be recurring salary, benefits, and fleet costs. The $23,000 one-time expense for purchase of vehicle and equipment. With that, we will take questions.
Questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Labram is present, so he can assist with answering your questions if you have them.
I think you answered my question already that I wrote down. The two decision packages, those will be paid out of fees.
That's correct. These are revenue. These are positions are paid from the revenue that's generated by the process.
Okay. So
And we've had conversations.
Any of the funds that we have, or the general funds or property tax funds or
No.
anything. Okay.
To be supported by the revenue generated, and we have spoken to WABA regarding these positions to let them know the intent, and they're supportive of that action as well.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? I don't see any.
Very good.
Actually, I have one question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I just thought of it. I talked to someone the other day, and I talked to someone the other day, kind of got into this topic just a little bit, and they were telling me that they would like to see us have more inspectors because they don't like to have to wait very long for, the project is developing. They don't want to have to wait very long for that. So I guess, is there an average amount of time between when they call for an inspection that you guys track that, and how long it takes for them to show up and do whatever has to be done there?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Chris Labram. Yes, sir. We do a same-day inspection. If they call and schedule by 6 or 7 in the morning, we're usually able to get out the same day. Some inspections are scheduled when they permit through the dynamic portal. We generally, if there's one we have to push, it's because there's a complication with it. Maybe some work got put in front of something else at the job site. We do have those occasions where we get overbooked and have to call and ask folks to wait. The main problem we get into is that by taking our scheduled inspections, we sometimes cannot react to fire department calls us, neighborhood division calls us, and needs. We had a water heater explode in a house yesterday in the city limits, and if all the plumbers are out on scheduled jobs, sometimes those are the ones that have to wait.
And then finally, my last question would be, with the changes in plumbing code, adding the IPC, that's not changed the volume. This is a volume need. There's enough permits being pulled that you need the extra inspector.
Correct, sir.
Has nothing to do with the code discussion. Okay.
Correct, sir.
That's all my questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other questions.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. Then we will move along. Our next will be emergency medical services. EMS, page 175. EMS is committed to providing quality out-of-hospital health care. Areas in EMS include administration, which is accounts receivable, training and education, and logistics. Operations. EMS has 16 stations or posts throughout the county and within the city limits of Wichita. We run 20 peak time ambulances, and we support special operations through the ability to deploy a disaster trailer, mobile incident command post, bike medics during Riverfest and other events. We provide emergent, non-emergent, advanced life support, treatment, and safe, expedient transportation for those who become acutely ill or injured. We cover the entire county, 1,008 square miles, approximately 500,000 residents. We had 62,000 requests for service last year, and we transported about 2/3 of those, about 43,220 patients in 2017. Our budget request in the property tax fund includes emergent responses. In 2017, we were able to demonstrate that we were able to make urban responses 91% of the time, almost 92% of the time, in less than 9 minutes on average, and countywide, 92.5%, less than 10 minutes countywide. Those numbers have held fairly steady over the years, but declined slightly by a point or so over the past several years. Non-emergent transports. As you know, we have a contract with the City of Wichita to provide that service, and we have a benchmark or a metric that we are to make those calls in 60 minutes, 98% of the time. We are making those calls, all calls, not just in the City of Wichita, making those calls 96% of the time in less than an hour. In the City of Wichita, it's just shy of 100%. It's over 99% in the City of Wichita. We also have contracts with Wesley Medical Center and with Via Christi System for non-emergent transports. We meet the criteria on those contracts 99.5% of the time. So EMS does very well at managing its call load, its call volume, and managing the dispatch of those units to ensure that, number one, emergent calls are responded to promptly and taken care of appropriately, and then non-emergent calls where generally that is a facility who has a patient under care who wants them moved to another facility. It is not emergent, and so there is time to get there, get them transported without any danger to the patient, and EMS manages those very well. So we're proud of the work that they do in that area. Let's see, we're going to move into some metrics here. So we have a graph that shows over years what the volume of calls were. The blue is the emergent calls. As you can see, in 15, they kind of spiked at 57,195. In 16 and 17, the emergent calls reduced slightly. Non-emergent calls in those same years, in 16 and 17, increased above 15. Total calls is a line at the top. So in 2015, again, around 2015, it peaked at about 64,053 calls. 16 was down slightly. 17 was down again slightly. Currently, there's a projection that call volume may increase again in 2018 into 2019. We're monitoring this at that time. This line indicates staffing, the ambulance staffing. Back in 2010, it was at 17 ambulances. Over time, the commission has added resources. Presently, we're running 20 ambulances to manage the calls, and the ambulances are deployed so as to manage peak times effectively. Director Hadley has provided additional metrics to demonstrate the effect that the Commission's decision to add resources had on responses for citizens in Sedgwick County. So this graph shows 2016 The blue area indicates average peak volume throughout the course of a day from 000 hours, which is 1 minute after midnight, all the way up to midnight at the other end of the graph. As you can see, through the nighttime hours, it decreases, and then it starts picking up about 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, and it peaks around 5 in the evening, and then it starts to taper again. The dotted line indicates industry best standards. It's a plus 2 to 4, depending on the metric. We've settled on a plus 3 for staffing to ensure that we have adequate staffing so we don't fall behind. This line indicates where staffing was in 2016 relative to the call volume. As you can see, in those peak hours between about 4 and 6 in the evening, the volume of ambulances staffed allowed some time there where we may not have somebody to respond. This line indicates, based on the plus 3 standard of staffing, where staffing should theoretically be to ensure that we have adequate ambulances to respond to that type of call volume. So,
Rusty,
yes, sir.
Commissioners, if you notice on this chart, in my opening presentation when I spoke about statistical analysis and understanding requirements based off of need, and us trying to utilize that across the organization, this is kind of what we want to go to, especially when you're talking about 911 call center, even for elections. It's just a great way to really understand what the demand is and then how many resources or requirements you need to fill the gap. And it's something that it's over this next year or so I really want to get deeper into, try to figure out how we can do that across the board and use that as a means in the budget process. I think Scott, just based off of what he's done in EMS, really gets down to the crew, to the person of trying to figure out, and utilize resources, but trying to figure out what he needs in order to fulfill the mission. But there's no reason why we can't do that in the call center. We can't do that in elections. We can't do that in all of our service organizations. So that's what we're going to go to. It may take us some time, but we're going to dig into it and really try to affect the next budget with it.
Okay, so that was 2016. This again is the same layout. Shows you where the peak times are. This is for 2017. Again, it shows you where staffing ideally would be. It shows you where staffing was in 2016. And it shows you where staffing was in 2017 with the addition of resources in 2017. So with the addition of resources that the Commission authorized in 2017, it put EMS in a position where even during the peak hours they had 20 ambulances staffed to be able to meet that demand and not fall below the peaks there. And then for 2018, the shape of the graph changes a little bit, but it's still pretty similar. Again, where peak staffing should be, 2016 and 2017. This was for the first 3 months of 18. You can see that the line starts touching the top of the peak. What occurred there was January, February, EMS call volumes went to all-time record highs. Scott attributes that largely to the flu outbreak that occurred here in Sedgwick County around that time. We kind of peaked during January and February in Sedgwick County. And then in March it began to taper off a little bit, and by April volume levels had fallen back to normal. So as of right now, since the flu season dropped off, we're back at a good level for staffing since it's kind of leveled out. Scott, will continue to monitor this. He indicates he feels like we're in a good place, and based on the data, we believe we're in a good place, but we will watch this throughout 18. And if volumes continue to increase, then it may be in the 20 budget process. We may need to ask for additional resources, but it'll kind of depend on what call volume does over the next 12 months or so. So that's kind of an illustration. He included these slides to But Mr. Scholes, and to let you all see the effect of adding the resources at the critical time based on the statistics and the data, and that it did have the effect that was desired, and we're continuing to monitor, but right now it looks like we're staffed properly for the population. With that, we move into the budget request. The budget request, with the intention to be flat with the 2018 revised, salary adjustments puts us currently at 0.86 below. Again, personnel is down slightly. Contractuals are down slightly. Commodities are up just 0.30%. Kind of adjustment of those two, contractuals and commodities, moving some money around there. There was a 2018 allocation for $160,000 to buy some tablets for field use for data collection. That charge will not occur in 2019 because it's a 2018 one-time purchase. So the overall 2019 budget request is a minus 0.88% from EMS at this time. There is one decision package from EMS. As the manager indicated yesterday, one of the themes that you're going to see is technology. This is a technology request from EMS. They have a device on board their ambulances and in their EMS supervisor vehicles. It's a router of sort, or a device that helps with communication. Those devices are approaching technological end of life in 2019, end of 2019. So a request is made to begin replacing those. The request currently is for $50,000, which is about a third of the total need. We'll try to phase in the replacement of these. The one thing we have to be mindful of is that we are moving toward the FirstNet wireless network. Sometime in the future, there's not a date set at this point that we will move to that, but this particular device is not compatible with FirstNet. So as we move to replace some of these in 2019, we'll just need to be mindful that as technology continues to advance and as we move toward FirstNet, we want to probably complete those replacements probably into 2020. By 2020, we want to be replacing the rest of those to ensure that we don't fall behind with the technology that we're working with. And that's kind of an illustration of what the gateways do. They communicate with 911 with the marvelous software, which helps identify which units are available and closest to respond to an event. And that's where that request was made. So that's the end of the EMS. Do we have any questions?
Questions on EMS? Mr. Howell?
I always have questions. I'm sorry about that. But
He didn't even turn his light on.
I know. He just looks over here and he knows that's going to be me. Has there been times in the last year that we ran out of resources? In other words, I've heard rumors that we basically had all our ambulances out on calls and there was nothing left. By the way, I'm a huge fan of what we do here in the EMS, but I just want to know if that happens, we need to find ways to mitigate it. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Yes, there are very infrequent occasions where we may get saturated during a particular hour of the day where we have status advisories, and dispatch pages those out starting at status advisory 3, meaning we only have 3 available units left, 2, 1, and 0. And the times we do that is very infrequent. I don't have that data in front of me today to tell you exactly how many times that happened, but it does happen on occasion where the demand outpaces the resources that we have available at any given time.
So we have 20 ambulances potentially out on the streets at one time. How many other ambulances are not on the streets that we own that could be on the streets?
Well, we have a total of 8 surge units. At any given time, 3 or 4 of those are tied up because other vehicles are in for maintenance or repair. So typically we have a available capacity of 3 or 4 additional units we could put on at any given time. And we do staff those when we know we have impending weather events and those types of things. We'll staff those up to get them ready to
So there may be times we would have 24 potentially on the street.
We could, yes.
Okay. One of the things I don't even know how I know this now, but I know that maybe in the past we did use firefighters potentially to help. Yeah, if they go to a situation and they need someone to drive, maybe both paramedics are needed to tend to the patient. that a firefighter could drive that ambulance. We used to do that, I guess, and maybe we're not doing that now. Is that some? Can you talk about that a little?
Yeah, we used to do that, but we're currently not doing that due to the training and liability there lies within to get people properly trained to drive the ambulance, like we train our paramedics and go through the defensive driving course and making sure they're properly insured and meet all the requirements in county policy for the level 1 driving position. We don't have a real good way to do that to ensure that that is occurring with other agencies beyond the county. But right now, if we do need additional help, we still utilize those folks in the back of the ambulance. So we'll take a firefighter in the back of the ambulance or an EMS reserve and to help and assist with patient care. And we can also send a supervisor with high-level training to that call to also ride in if we need the extra hands in that vehicle.
It just seems like they have 2 paramedics on there and one paramedics driving the ambulance when you have other people who are licensed to drive large vehicles and do that as a part of their job.
Correct.
For Sedgwick County, I think we would utilize that as a way to mitigate this type of thing when it happens. And you have a lot less people. The pool is a lot smaller for the EMS than it is for our firefighters, and so it'd be nice to see some collaboration or some coordination between the 2 departments that would help that when that happens.
We could certainly look into that again.
Well, I happen to notice on slide number 48 that the numbers are backwards on here. 2017 is on the left and 2014 is on the right, but I happen to notice that we did better before on our urban and county-wide priorities. Our numbers have declined, and that's a concern. I know the call volume's gone up, and I know we've added some staff and we've added some stations, but at the end of the day, the numbers are going down, and that's not a good thing.
Yeah, we monitor. That's just one of the metrics, along with the temporal demand, which Mr. Leeds went over. We're looking at that combined with this data, combined with the geospatial analysis that we do, where the calls occur. And we only talked about when they occur. We didn't talk about where they occur, and that's part of the whole overall picture. So why it may have declined, which may indicate a little bit of busyness, we need to look into that to make sure that we have adequate resources and where we staff those resources as well.
Well, anyway, I guess my takeaway is I'm concerned about it, and I would like to solve it. So whatever that takes, I want the experts to come together with some kind of an idea on how to solve this, whether it become managing our resources better by some of the things I already mentioned, or if we need to add resources, whatever that is. I think we need to be aware of this and get ahead of it, because right now it's going the wrong direction, and I think our challenges are growing, which is a good. I mean, we have a growing community. There's a lot of good things in that regard, but we also have an aging community. We've got. Anyway, I guess my point is the resources are going to have to continue to grow, and our ability to respond is going to have to continue to grow. And how do we do that? And right now, I already see a documented challenge right here in front of us, and I'm not sure we have a solution in this budget request today or budget proposal today that's going to even begin to start solving this. So we need to find a way to solve it.
Right, and a lot of that reflective, again, Mr. Leeds alluded to, January and February are extremely challenging for us. We set record numbers, 5,800 calls in January. We've never had 5,800 calls in a single month. And in February, we had over 5,100 calls. We've never had over 5,000 calls in any February, even in a leap year with 29 days. Again, the numbers are starting to trend back up as the graphs look. So we need to look at that more over time as we go through 2018 to ensure that we can still provide that level of service.
And I understand that seems like an outlier, but I guess my point is this, we actually had a very mild winter as well.
We did.
Okay, so
we did.
There's things that could have made things even worse. And I guess my point is I don't see anything in this proposal today that shows, I guess, an awareness or a solution for something that's kind of trending in the wrong direction. I would like to see something, whether it be administrative coordination, department, working together. I'm not sure what to do there, but I think there's something here that we need to pay more attention to. We're not there yet. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm a huge fan of what you do. I'm probably the biggest fan. I love our EMS. I think we've got one of the best in the nation, but I am concerned that we have a challenges building, and we don't have anything that's a parallel to that to help solve the problem.
Yeah. And we are looking at other solutions, as you mentioned. I mean, we're looking at potential nurse line in the 911 center to address lower acuity calls and lower patient needs that we could funnel off, and that would help mitigate what you're seeing. So there are other things that we are studying and looking at.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Ranzau.
Along that same line, I also see that non-emergent calls, the response time has gone up, and I've expressed this before. I want to make sure that we're not so focused on this non-emergent, worried about not getting. We've talked about this because we reallocated, assets to this area, that we're so worried about, this non-emergent issue that we're not losing focus on our top priority.
Correct.
So,
And in our contracts with specifically Via Christian Wesley, that was with that in mind. That's why we have the wide range of flexibility to hold those calls while we service the more higher acuity emergent needs. So if a patient is at a Wesley West and needs transported into the Wesley main campus who's under care and it's not life-threatening, and another life-threatening emergency comes out, we're going to take the life-threatening emergent call first, and that other call is going to hold. And the division leaders do.
I understand the philosophy behind it, but I also see the numbers here.
Yep.
Okay, the lowest priority response time has gone up. The highest priority response for target, has gone down very slightly.
Slightly, yeah.
I mean, another question is whether that's statistically significant,
Right.
but nevertheless, that's my concern.
Okay.
That, we should, there's a return on investment, as far as this greater than 90%, et cetera, how many resources we have to have available to get that. And I never got a good answer when we had this whole discussion about non-emergent, is whether or not spending that much money to get up to that target was really cost effective or could have been better utilized in the emergent area and let somebody else do some of these things, and it would have been a better solution. So
Right.
we just need to stay focused. Not forget about that possibility.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I have a couple questions. And I should have asked them when Fire was up here, honestly. But your technology decision package cued me to think about it. What are we doing with the radios for the fire department so that we're compatible with Wichita if they go to these dual band radios?
Presently, we're still, we haven't taken any action on our radios yet. We are looking at potentially putting out an RFI sometime this year. We want to get an RFI out this year for radio specs. As far as Wichita is concerned, they did come to the 9/11 advisory board and talk about their plan or their vision for the future on radios. What I can tell you is they have some long-term plan to try to migrate to a multi-band radio, but they don't have a short-term plan to get that accomplished. Is the best way I can put that. They have a vision, but they don't necessarily have funding to get there anytime soon, and we don't know how long it'll take them to get there. So we're still evaluating whether our needs are the same as their needs, and that'd be part of the RFI process, is to look at both options and what the cost will be, and again, whether their needs are the same as ours.
So you don't see anything in 2019 that we're going to be spending money on dual band radios?
We could possibly buy, what we're looking at is a potential to phase in rather than buying all at once. We may buy in a couple of phases. So there's a potential, if we get the RFI out in the next month or so, we could possibly make a single installment of purchases before the end of the year on fire radios. As far as radios for other divisions, that would be something that's budgeted later in later years.
Okay.
We don't have a firm answer yet because we need to get the request for information out, and then we'll evaluate once we get that information back whether we can move forward with a partial purchase this year or whether we just push it into 2019.
Is our fire and our EMS on the same radios? Can they communicate back and forth?
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All right. As long as we're on that, and I'm probably jumping ahead, what about the RMS system? Is that something you're going to brief me later, and I can wait until then?
We have the city and the county are looking at two specific products. We've reviewed one of those, and the second one is scheduled for the 18th. The second product demonstration will be here for city and county to collectively evaluate on the 18th of this month. And then once that demonstration is complete and the evaluation's done, then we will be able to come back and brief you on where we are.
Okay. Is that going to be in the 2019 budget?
Again, I think we were trying to get an RFP pushed out in 2019. The purchase probably won't occur until 2020. I'm sorry. We were trying to get the RFP pushed out in 2018 late, and the purchase probably would occur in 2019.
Okay, and that's going to meet the needs for Wichita also?
That's what we're evaluating with these demonstrations.
That's what we're working towards, but until we know, we haven't put anything in the budget. You know, at the workshop, we specifically talked about the potential of using contingency to pay for it. But until we know what we need or what our requirements are, it's going to be hard to kind of budget for that, and whether the city of Wichita is even going to, you know, partner with us on it. We're still in that stage.
Okay.
So we'll let you know, and we'll even invite you to the demo if you want to see it. And I think we're looking at actually 3 systems. One that they don't really want to look at, but I think we're looking at 3, right?
We're looking at 2 of them collectively with the city of Wichita, and then we have, I think, 4 others.
I think we're looking at 6 total.
Yeah.
And then
2 with the
we're
city.
invited to the table, as all of our partners have, to look at every system that we're doing. Because even if they don't go in on the RMS with us, the CAD product is something that they use.
Okay, well, I certainly hope Wichita does partner with us. I think that would save money for Wichita and Sedgwick County, both if we're partners. So I would be very disappointed if we didn't get to the point where we were partners on this. But by the same token, if they decide that they're not partners with us, any cost to be able to interface with our record management system is going to have to be borne by the city of Wichita and not by Sedgwick County.
We aren't to that point yet, but we will. Once we get these demonstrations complete, we will brief you on where we are, and hopefully we can work collectively together.
I got just a couple more questions. First of all,
Before you go on to that,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner, if you look at your forecast sheet, we did put it in the forecast sheet, the RMS CAD, but it's not in this 2019 budget that we're briefing right now. It's in the forecast.
Okay. Good. First of all, your stats I like. You briefed those when we briefed the mayor and the vice mayor and the city manager on our response times and so forth. I think that's a good idea. I do appreciate what you're doing there. Next question I have is on the VA. Is everything running smooth and we're billing them on time? We're getting money back? No glitches, or do we still need to work that?
Well, Commissioner, going with fresh claims, we're doing just fine. We are still working through some of the older remaining claims. There were some denials that were submitted and some documents we received from the VA that said they had paid us, and they provided an electronic tracking number, and we said, well, you didn't pay that to us. You may have paid it, but it wasn't received by Sedgwick County. And so there's still some discrepancy that we're working through with them. But we're hopeful to have that done at the very latest by the end of June at the worst. We're ready to be done too.
Thank you. My last question is, you have in your forecast West EMS station in 2020. We are building one on the southeast and the northeast in 2017, according to your forecast here. Your response times going into Cheney, Mount Hope, and so forth are the longest response times that you have. 2020 to me is unacceptable. I don't understand why it's going to take us till 2020 before we start doing something to react to our longest response times. And our shortest response times are getting new facilities right now.
Okay. Now, it's part of the CIP process as far as the...
Then we need to review our
reallocation.
CIP process.
All right.
I do not believe that 2020 is acceptable.
All right. We can provide some research and metrics on that and visit that as part of the CIP allocation.
I think it's more than research and metrics. You can already tell you right now, what is it, 12, 13 minutes to get out to Cheney?
But longer than that.
Longer than
About
that.
14.
It doesn't take too much metrics for me to say that 12, 13 minutes to respond is not acceptable.
Yes, sir.
I would hope that before the end of this budget process, you have a better answer. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one more question. Our EMS billing, our billing for EMS services, are we getting are we keeping up with that in terms of not the VA stuff, but just the standard billing for EMS services? Are we tracking that pretty well? And things are under control there, or are things getting? When I first became commissioner, I think it was not as much as it wasn't solved as much as I would like. I think we made some changes to that and added some billing wraps and things like that. So we're doing well with that right now. Okay, and then I guess just a point, a note, because it's really not obvious when you look at your slides, but let me just say, looking at the budget book, our expenditures are trending positive to the county, and our revenues are trending positive to the county. Together, those two things is about $273,000 net gain to our ending balance for fiscal 2019. One of them we save $173,000 over previous year, and the other one we save $98,000 over previous year, if I see that correctly. So together, am I seeing that right? They add together. In other words, our revenues are higher and our expenditures are lower. If I say it that way. Is that correct? So about $273,000 is how much benefit to our goods, so to speak.
Yes, sir. And so just as a refresher, at the end of 2017, the EMS fund actually was insolvent. And so we had to take some corrective action to fix that fund so that it started 2018 with a $100,000 balance. But one of the things that we want to do in order to meet that target fund balance that we showed on the forecast sheet yesterday is to increase revenues greater than what we think we'll spend in order to build that balance back up.
What is the ending balance after the fiscal 19 budget that's presented right now? What's our ending balance at the? Where is that?
The forecast.
You know, we spent some money down. We did brick and mortar station over in my district, and I appreciate that. But we spent some money out of that fund recently. So
Right now, we're forecasting that for 2019, there'll be $778,000 in ending fund balance for EMS at the end of 19.
Okay. That's what I needed here. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. That's all on EMS.
Now, one thing that we'll kind of, before we move on, when we get into the CIP workshop and when we brief you the CIP, we'll address the EMS station and the whys of why the southeast post was put in. Northeast post it's not a new post; it's just replacing.
Well, I'm not objecting to those two being built. I supported them. What I'm objecting to is 2 years out before we start thinking about one for the west part of the county.
Right, and we'll talk about that at the CIP workshop and then what the best plans are based off the revenues.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to emergency communications on page 160.
So,
Okay, the mission of emergency communications is to provide the people of Sedgwick County the vital communications link to emergency services, personnel, and equipment by asking the right questions in order to send the right people to the right place in the right amount of time safely. Emergency communications funding includes administration, the Emergency Communications Center, which provides radio dispatching services for police, fire, and EMS agencies within Sedgwick County while answering emergency calls from citizens and visitors. They're available to citizens and visitors of Sedgwick County and process 720,793 emergency calls and almost 7.2 million radio transmissions in 2017. We have radio maintenance under the wing of emergency communications. Radio maintenance maintains the public radio system as a whole while providing individual service programming and repairs to radios that operate on the system. Have approximately 10,000 users on the radio system, and the public safety radio system is used by 911 to notify first responders of citizens who are in crisis and first responders to document information and request additional personnel and resources. Public safety radio system is also used by non-public safety entities such as Public Works to provide safe roadways. The emergency telephone service is funded through the state 9/11 fee, provides equipment needed for receiving and processing emergency calls, as well as training for the 9/11 personnel. All users of 911, citizens and public safety personnel, the equipment, the 911 phone system, the CAD system, the radio towers, is needed for citizens to access emergency services and for dispatchers to relay information to first responders. And the equipment is serviced and maintained through a combination of internal staff and external vendors. The 2019 request for funding for services from property tax funds includes administration, which provided review of over 10,600 events to ensure performance standards were met. Emergency Communications Center again did over 720,000 calls and 7.2 million radio transmissions. And the radio shop completed 33 equipment installs, 350 radio programmed, and over 250 radio installs and repairs. In the non-tax fund, the Emergency Telephone Service provides for the infrastructure needed for 9/11 Communications Center and for the training of the staff. So getting to the budget, the general fund, there's a slight increase, and in the tax fund, again, another slight increase for a 1.56% increase for the 2019 request. Getting into the details of that. In personnel, there's a 2.71% increase. Contractuals are generally flat, 0.04%. There is no debt service. Commodities are down slightly. And the interfund transfers, which include an allocation, the 2018 allocation for CAD of $1 million and $653,910 allocation from the 9/11 phone fee is what that number comes from. So overall, the increase is a 1.56% increase at this point in the budget request for emergency communications. There is one decision package. This decision package is not yet complete. Based on the key performance indicator that has been established for 911 for emergency communications, to answer 90% of calls within 10 seconds or less during the peak time of the day, or the peak time of a day. We are not meeting that KPI at this point. That standard is set by NENA, which is a professional organization. It is not mandated by law, but it is a best practice as they indicate. So this decision package is one that we are working now. The intent is for the manager to bring to you at the time of the recommended budget specifics on this request as to the addition of bodies to help move toward meeting that 90% in 10 seconds key performance indicator. Right now we're working on the statistics to determine what that number is.
Commissioners, this is something that in my budget workshops that I'd ask them to put in there because I know there is a need, but I need it demonstrated. I need to understand what the true requirement is. There's going to be an escalating need over the next many years, but I need to understand what that is. So I know they need some personnel in there, but I don't have a way to demonstrate that requirement, and I need to see what that is. So it's a TBD. They did meet on that last week. I know Laura is supposed to come back to the budget folks with some more data, but I need to see what that requirement is. And right now, Laura, if you could, where are when he says we're not meeting KPI? Where are we in the 70s, correct?
We are in the lower 70 percentile. Laura Forsey, your director of 911, good morning. Yeah, we are in the lower 70 percentile of calls being answered within 10 seconds.
And so we need to figure out what we need. But I put that up there as a parking slide to let you know that that is going to be coming. It's not a part of this one, and I owe that to you.
Is that percentage for all calls all day long?
Pretty much. That's the average, but we're We are very rarely at any hour of the day meeting that 90 percentile industry standard, and so we did not collect these statistics before. That was one of the things that we were looking forward to the new phone system for a better collection of data and analytics and that feature. And so now that that's come to fruition, we're seeing that we need a lot of work.
Do we have more data to show, like, okay, if it's not within 10 seconds, 15, 20?
Absolutely. It breaks down, it's 10, 15, I think 25, 40, and then it gets to a minute 20. And so we reach into that 90 percentile by 40 seconds, most hours of the day. Yes.
And how does that compare to MS communities that are comparable? Do you have any data like that?
So it's tricky to find a comparable community. I believe we are, from my understanding at the state level, the only community in Kansas that's not meeting that standard. I have talked to other 911 directors, most notably out of San Francisco. They had a struggle with meeting that 90th percentile. And so I've been communicating with my peers in larger cities that are not meeting that or have made strides and are now meeting that. So I know it's a challenge for some communities, but most 911 centers across the country are not our size and don't handle, they're not set up the way that we are. And so, the most common 911 center is a 4, 5, 6 seat PSAP. So in those smaller communities, it's a little bit easier to meet that need. But I don't know if that answers your question. We are not the only one with that issue. Everybody, but we are the only one in Kansas with it.
Right. Well, I figured that because
we're different than everybody. Yeah.
Well, I guess okay. Well, I'd like to have a few more details about different communities, I guess, and is there different ways to organize, the same.
So the conversations that I've had with directors who were not meeting it is, what did you do to meet it? And what did you, because we're looking at personnel, are there other avenues beyond personnel? And so we've talked about different, there's a program, for example, that we will implement with our new CAD system that allows some of the alarm calls to not be phoned in. It comes in electronically. It's ASAP to PSAP is what it's called. So there are things like that I know other directors have done in their centers that are working well to get some of that call volume off. But mostly the answer that I'm getting is it takes personnel, it takes numbers, and it takes increased retention.
Have any other communities had addressed the issue of, I guess, inappropriate calls coming in and how to reduce those? Have been successful in reducing those? Is there anything? I mean, we get calls for lots of stuff. Right.
So success is a term that's hard to define within that. Some have been successful in reducing those on their 911 center because they've implemented non-emergency lines. And so that to them is a success in moving those out of that 911 system. I know looking forward, I just earlier this month went to see what the state has in store for us because we're part of that collective phone system on the state level. And there are going to be some features on the phone system in 2019 that will help with those cell phone misdials, those querying of a line to see if anybody's on there, or if it's abandoned when it comes in, instead of us having to manually call it back, it will automatically through the system call it back and say if you have an emergency, press 1 to be put through to 911, otherwise disregard. So there's things technology-wise that are coming up that will really help alleviate some of this.
Well, that would be helpful, would it not?
Yes. I'm thrilled with it. I wish it were coming tomorrow. So yeah, we've got some things that are on the horizon, but bottom line is the answer that I'm getting and where I feel like I have the support from the manager and Rusty is that we need extra bodies as well. But that's what I'm getting from my peers. Does that more fully answer your question, or is there something else I can point out?
Yeah, I'd like to, if you could send us the data that you have as far as a breakdown, I think that'd be helpful.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for speaking with us this morning.
Absolutely.
In the past, you've given us trend data on call volume increases, and it's not in the report today, so I was curious if you can talk about that or maybe get us some data on that.
Yeah, we have data on what our numbers are, how they're trending, what we're seeing every hour, the analytics on this system are just head and shoulders above the other one, and so we know our top busiest hours, what we're getting there. Absolutely.
But with regard to the call volume continuing to increase year after year after year, we for several years it was just really a steep curve there, and we had to add lots of resources to deal with the these people having cell phones and the butt dials or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So
We actually saw a dip in 2017, a slight decrease. It was very nominal, but in call volume, and right now we're trending up in 2018. But I will warn you with our analytics is that we went from one phone platform that didn't capture it very well to one that is very robust and captures it completely. And so when you look back over several years, I find the data that we had on our previous phone system to be curious compared to our current one. So the trend of lower numbers thus far this year, although we are starting to trend up now that we're getting warmer weather, I don't know that I trust our data as well from the previous phone system, if that makes sense. And so I think that we are getting a really clean start with data, with analytics. It's going to provide us a lot better forecasting and
okay, so
potential to stay ahead.
again, so my takeaway from this is that's really not the problem today. The problem is we're just not meeting our metric our goal. We're not meeting the goal, but it's not because the call volume's increased like we thought it had been in the past. That's either leveled off or whatever, but that's not the problem today.
The problem with call volume increasing is that historically we did not stay on top of it as aggressively as we did. So that trend has created our issue now, but that issue that we have now is not because it has increased exponentially within the last couple of years when we have added staff.
So assuming you, again, I see right here it says FTE request is TBD, and I understand that. But do we have equipment that's not being utilized by staff that if you had more people you could plug them into, you have the spaces to do that type of thing?
Sure. So there are times during either surge events like the 4th of July or even during nights that we anticipate higher call volume that we are able to use all the equipment in the comm center. It's a full comm center, but that's with hiring overtime to do so. That's not our typical staffing level. And so the goal is to get to, within the parameters of what the manager would recommend, to get to a staffing level where we're utilizing that equipment daily. So long story short, we have equipment that we can utilize, that we are utilizing at times. We just need bodies to sit there.
This is going to be a dumb question, but maybe you can help me understand. Is there a difference between a call taker and a dispatcher?
There is. So when we hire in employees as call takers, they are just focused on that 911 call. They're not doing that dual duty of dispatching and call taking at the same time. And so they're 100% focused on the citizen, their need, making sure that we're getting units out there and getting it addressed. Dispatchers are call takers as well. In the progression to dispatcher, you're doing that dual duty. So you've got your radio headset, you're talking to field personnel, you've got your phone, you're talking to citizens, managing 2 conversations at least at the same time. And so that's one of the things that we would like to get to, where there's more call takers, where dispatchers aren't having to really do that dual duty as much, and that providing a higher level of service that I think our community deserves.
So just so I understand, so does a dispatcher keep track of where the police officers are and how many are on scene, and
Correct.
Or the fire trucks or the EMS ambulances? You're keeping track of those resources somewhat. You know what's going on, whereas the call taker is dealing with the person putting stuff into the cab so they can all get the same data type of deal. Okay.
Correct. So every dispatcher is a call taker, but every call taker is not a dispatcher, if that helps.
We've talked about this in the past a little bit, but I think we do have an attrition issue. Can you talk about what is your attrition right now? How many people are you having to train each year to keep up with your needs, and is there a deficit?
Right. So it's trending up right now, and I'm sorry I don't have the numbers. I don't have them in front of me, and I can't remember them, but it is trending up. We have created a position we modified a position to really focus in on employee retention, recruitment and development, and finding that employee development piece that increases employee retention. We're seeing a shift in culture. It is getting better, but there are some fundamental things, in my opinion, that have to be done to increase that retention and to retain well-trained employees. And so that's something that I know that we're discussing with Rusty and the manager about some plans to help address that.
So do you have an idea what your attrition rate is? I mean, you can't even guess.
I don't
at
want
that?
to misquote numbers.
Okay.
I can send you some, though.
All right. How many dispatchers and call takers do you have right now?
I'm slotted for 98 positions. I'm down 10 right now.
Slotted for 98?
And that includes administration, radio shop, everything. I'm down 1 in the radio shop, and I'm down. So I guess I'm down.
So 98's everybody.
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. That's all my questions for now. I think this is one of those areas where we need to spend a lot of our budget time trying to solve this one too. This is a pretty big deal. So
We
thank
would
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Forensic Science Center, page 205. The mission of the Forensic Science Center is to provide the highest quality medico-legal and forensic laboratory services in support of the criminal justice system in a timely manner for the citizens of Sedgwick County. The Science Center provides pathologist-directed autopsies to determine cause and manner of death of those individuals who die and come under the jurisdiction of the district coroner, and serves as the crime laboratory for all law enforcement agencies within Sedgwick County. The 2019 budget request includes, for property tax funds, includes the pathology division, triage 3,302 death calls, 389 death scene investigations. The number of indigent cases worked was 45. We had 13 no next of kin cases, and we did 892 post-mortem examinations. The Forensic Laboratory Division does scientific analysis of evidence associated with criminal activity and courtroom testimony. Did 3,780 forensic laboratory cases submitted in 2017. They produced 4,185 forensic reports. We had 742 criminal cases that carried over greater than 60 days. We had 67 DNA cases, 560 illicit drug cases, and 23 tox cases. As you can see at the table below, we also had 1,561 subpoenas received by staff for expert testimony in court cases. The table below indicates what the performance measures are and what the estimates are for 18 and 19. The increased estimate for 2018 is based on the understanding that crime rates are up, violent crime rates have been up, and then also recently the KBI has released information from their sexual assault kit study that they were part of as part of a national grant project, indicating that a best practice recommendation from KBI, and has occurred in other jurisdictions, is 100% submittal of all sexual assault kits to a laboratory for DNA examination, which is contrary to past practice, pretty much every jurisdiction in the nation. So he's anticipating increase in DNA cases would push the length of time for completions up in 2018 and 2019 potentially.
Who made that recommendation?
I'm sorry?
Who made that recommendation?
The Kansas Bureau of Investigations was part of a national grant project to research sexual assault kit management, and they recently have released some best practice recommendations from that study.
Well, we can send them up to KBI, can't we? They got a new lab up there that the taxpayer spent, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars on, right?
That is certainly an option that we are.
Because they made the recommendation to send it to a lab.
Correct.
Did they provide any funding to do all this?
No, there's no. This is not legislated, and there's no funding.
Taxpayers paid for that lab up there, and it's a new one. And
yeah. So we'll get into that here in a minute. But this is part of the theme that the manager indicated. You're going to see stresses on the system in public safety, but we haven't committed to accepting all of these rape kits in our lab here. I'm just making you aware that that's what that projection was based on. So
while I'm thinking about it, I've got another issue I would like to talk to you and the manager about offline.
Okay. All right. So just statistically, as we know, violent crime rates have been up in Kansas. They've been up across the nation in various jurisdictions. And this data just shows some of those numbers between 2004 and 16 where increases were occurring. This is local data for this is coming out of the city of Wichita, which is obviously our biggest our biggest city in the county, and obviously our biggest contributor to the Science Center. And as you can see from the data from WPD, violent crimes have been on the rise pretty much each year for the past 3 or 4 years. So that's a continuing trend into 2018, which does have some impact on the Science Center. So moving to the budget, generally attempting to remain flat in line with the 2018 revised. There is a small increase in personnel costs, I think, that drive the general fund. So the increase in personnel is up 1.2%, which is some adjustments. Contractuals is down 10%. Commodities down, and $25,000 equipment one time in 2018 will not carry over. So the contractuals reduction comes from, it's primarily some grant reductions, which accounts for that dollar reduction in contractuals. And then in the commodities column, there's $93,358 reduction from a NIJ DNA grant that accounts for the reduction in commodities. So those are grant reductions, leaving the overall budget request for 2019 at minus 2.83%, or at $4,102,482. There are some decision packages associated with the Forensic Science Center that we will talk about here. The Science Center, as you are aware, has a number of pieces of equipment that help automate the processes for processing evidence at the Science Center. Those pieces of equipment, many of them are aging, but Dr. Rohrig has maintained service contracts on those pieces of equipment, so as they break, we have service contracts to get them repaired, generally in a timely manner so that it doesn't delay the processing of those cases. The contractuals for maintenance of those pieces of equipment is anticipated, is going up in 2019, and so this decision package is a request for $50,278 to cover the increase in the cost of those contracts to maintain that equipment into 2019. This slide gives you kind of an overview of the number of pieces of equipment. It shows you some of the ages on those. The top portion shows you the pieces of equipment that are under service agreement. Actually, the first two sections show you pieces that are under service agreements, and then there's others that are out of service agreement. But the money that he's asking for is to maintain the service agreement on those pieces that do have service agreements attached to them. That's part of the technology improvement plan discussion. Lots of pieces of technology that require maintenance and upgrades, and so that's part of the discussion that will be had as we move forward with a technology improvement plan. Decision package 2 is a request for $34,680. This is to cover the increased cost of materials needed to conduct DNA analysis in the lab. The cost of those the cost of those materials and the increased volume of cases has required that increase in commodities to cover those costs. And the third decision package is for a part-time FTE. For the past year, we've had a temporary part-time investigator working to relieve the full-time staff. They work 24-hour shifts, and based on some illness and some other issues, the doctor got a part-time investigator allocated on a temporary basis. That position was continued because the volume was there to justify the need to relieve those 24-hour investigators so that they could get rest and the quality of their life would be a little better. Based on the need, he is requesting that we make that temporary part-time a permanent part-time to supplement his investigation staff who go out on death cases. Again, we had volumes of death cases back early in the slide, but based on the volume, these investigators go out and conduct scene investigations so that they provide best information and evidence to the pathologist when those cases are being managed. The cost of this part-time is $32,826, which includes part-time salary and benefits. Using that part-time, he was able to reduce overtime. The amount of overtime reduction did not cover the cost of this $32,000, but we will present a revenue package here in a minute that will offset this cost and still have additional revenue left after this. This is a chart just to show that in the first quarter of 2017, comparing quarter to quarter, the number of 24-hour shifts worked in comparison to this year. Using the part-time, it relieved some of the full-time staff, and it relieved the supervisor from having to work an extra shift. So he's demonstrating that the part-time investigator did provide some relief and improve the quality of life for his full-time investigators by allowing them some time off. So the overall of his 3 decision packages is $117,784. The recurring is the $32,826 for the part-time medical investigator. The revenue package is recommended that we increase fees for pathology and toxicology services, jurisdictions outside of Sedgwick County, and there are 5, look at my notes, there are 5 surrounding judicial districts, which encompasses 12 counties around Sedgwick County, who utilize the services of our forensic science center pathologists to do their autopsies, do some of that work. We charge them a fee for doing that. We have not raised fees recently. The doctor has some statistics on what other labs charge, and we are well below what other labs are charging for this service. So we're recommending a 15% fee increase for outside usage of these services, which would generate approximately $69,960 of revenue in 2019 if we implemented this, which would offset the cost of that investigator, which directly supports in-county investigations of these types. So with that, if you have questions, the doctor is present, and we'll
Thank
answer
you.
your questions.
Questions? One quick question about fees. I remember just recently, Dr. Rohrig briefed us that we passed a contract to pick up folks and transport them, and it was a fairly expensive contract. Why don't we charge fees for that?
Those would be delivery fees.
Dr. Tim Rohrig for the record. The contract that we passed for delivery services were for body transports for Sedgwick County cases only. If there's a out-of-county case, the county bears the cost of transport to our center. So they take care of that cost. Once the body arrives at our center for examination, then we charge them for the services that are provided.
So we do charge a fee for that?
We indirectly for our out-of-county, that is, we tell them they have to pay it up front to the vendor, whoever they choose to bring the body in.
But in-county, we don't charge a fee?
In-county, no. All of our services for Sedgwick County cases are not charged to the family or to the investigating entity.
Is there a reason we don't charge a fee for that?
That's just been, we're a public service for Sedgwick County citizens. We're using our Sedgwick County tax dollars to support our mission. And so we don't charge law enforcement, Sedgwick County law enforcement, for our crime lab work. We don't charge, for investigating a homicide. Obviously, we don't charge the district attorney or anybody else for that work. That's just part of the cost of us doing business.
Okay. Well, it's a fairly significant number. As I recall, it was a couple $100,000 for the contract.
Well, that was over a 5-year period. Our per body transport is $65 is what we pay to bring the body into to the center if it's a Sedgwick County case.
Okay. I appreciate it. Commissioner Howe.
Thank you. I do have a question. Thank you, Chairman. I'm just curious, how many of the sexual assault kits have we not tested that are stacked up in our?
Well, we do not have any untested. Well, let me rephrase that. Every sexual assault kit that comes into our center, we test. Right now, we have about 27 that are somewhere in the queue. It's my understanding that Wichita Police Department has on their shelf right now about 592 kits. The sheriff has roughly 20-some-odd kits that have not been submitted to the Center for Examination.
I see. Okay. And that's a choice the choice they make, it sounds like.
Correct. We don't dictate what evidence is submitted to us. Our mission is to analyze the evidence once it comes in.
And I guess the rationale behind that is there may not be a criminal. It may not be. I mean, although it was evidence that was collected, perhaps, but maybe there's not. For whatever reason, there's no reason to test it in their mind because of something. Either there's a confession or there's no. What are the reasons why they wouldn't test the kids?
Well, let me back up just a second in the sense that every sexual assault kit, at least the practice in Sedgwick County, is examined by the law enforcement agency. In that kit, there's more than just the biological material.
Okay.
There's reports, photographs, other information. In many cases, that's all that is needed to adjudicate that particular crime. So with that said, to answer your specific question, if it's a matter of he said, she said, that both parties agree that, yes, there was sexual interaction, body fluids were exchanged, doing the analysis is not going to answer any forensic questions. So that would be an example of why a kit was not necessarily submitted to our office.
I think it's presumed by many people that if you collect the evidence, you must take it to the end and do the DNA test and whatever. So I heard a news report the other day saying that it was like $10,000 per test to have those. That sounds way off, way out of line to me. Is that a crazy number?
It is a crazy number. I think
number.
At least that entity probably misquoted the number that most people put out there is about $1,000 for a sexual assault kit examination. Now that doesn't include all the incremental costs for your infrastructure and things like that, but that's the direct cost.
So back to Commissioner Ranzau's point, if we wanted to do some testing on those is it less expensive to send them to the state's KBI lab?
Well, the cost of doing that examination would be the same. It's just who bears that cost.
I see. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I think I understand that a little bit better. That's all my questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. One, I guess, follow-up from what you just said about who bears the cost. Does that mean that we would then pay KBI to do the test?
No, sir. Actually, we would be out of it. If Wichita Police Department, for instance, elected to send a kit up to the KBI, they would take care of getting it up there, getting the evidence back, and then the district attorney would have to coordinate with the KBI as far as getting the witnesses down to testify if the case goes to trial.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any other questions. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Commissioners, you want to take a break now, or you want to keep on going through? I'd like a break.
I like a break.
Just one to go.
Not